Hey, what's up guys? This is a 2012 Mazda 3. We're gonna do a full brake job front and rear in links for the rear and rear suspension shocks. Alright, so that's a picture of the engine bay guys. And you'll see I'm gonna point out a power steering fluid that I'll be doing after all the brake jobs and stuff. Here are the parts that we're gonna use for this car. We're gonna have rotors for the front, rotors for the rear, pads for the front, and pads for the rear. That obviously look like a front pads. Right, so these are the retainers, one in each box, and there's also a lubrication in each box. And now it's time for the rotors. It's a cross-drilled rotors, guys, so notice the cross is going counterclockwise. This is for the left front. And this is going clockwise, and it's gonna go to right front of the vehicle. Alright guys, so this is left side, that's for the rear. Okay, alright guys, so these are the tools that we're gonna use. That's the pry bar I'm gonna use to remove the retainers. We have a 17mm socket for the bracket bolt, and for the caliper bolts we're gonna be using a 7mm hex socket. Alright, and it's a good idea to have a small extension and a ratchet, 3/8 ratchet, extendable, preferable, so you won't have a hard time cracking bolts and stuff like that. Swivel socket for the bracket bolts. Only have those if you're gonna use your gun to swap out the bolts. Alright guys, and finally we have a caliper tool to push the piston caliper in. That's how it is. Alright guys, let's get it started. Here's the jacking points for the vehicle. You can see there, that's where you want to jack it up on both sides. So I'm gonna have jack on both sides of the vehicle, and I'm gonna raise it up, and I'm gonna place the jack stand on the subframe of the vehicle, just like so, just where the lower control arms are, just like so. Alright, so I'm gonna slowly lower the jack and let the vehicle sit on the jack stand. Just making sure that the jack stand is on the proper spot. So I'm gonna lower it all the way down and till practically the car is sitting on the jack stand. I'm gonna lower the other side. There you go. You can actually hear it creaking. That must mean the vehicle have made contacts on the jack stand, and there you go. So there's a vehicle sitting on the jack stand, guys, on the subframe. Alright, and I'll just leave those jacks on each side for support, and there you go guys. Now we're gonna remove the wheels. 21mm socket for the wheel nuts. Right, I'm gonna turn the wheel all the way to the left, so I have easy access to get the bolts for the caliper and the bracket. Right, we're gonna remove the cover, the caliper bolts. There you go. And we're gonna use a 7mm hex socket for those bolts. But before that, we're gonna remove the retainer spring. There I have the pry bar. There you go, guys. That's how you remove the retainer. Okay, I'm gonna crack open the bolt. And I will be using a power tools to loosen the bolts all the way out, guys. Make this quicker. Using a pry bar there to stick it out, because sometimes the bolt doesn't go all the way out when you're loosening it. So to get it out of clear of the bracket, you're gonna have to push it a little bit so you can remove the caliper. Alright guys, so there I'm trying to remove the caliper with the pads. That's the outer pads, and this is the inner pads. So show you guys how to take that out. There you go, it's out. Now it's time to remove the bolts, the caliper bracket bolts, those two that I just touched. I'm gonna be using my power tools to remove that, and it's a 17mm socket. With my 17mm socket, I have a swivel attached to it. Makes it easier to maneuver in a tight spot kind of situation, guys. There you go. The brackets are out. And we can remove the rotors. Just hammer it a bit with a rubber mallet. Give it a little bit of good tap there and it'll come out. Okay, so that's the old one and the new rotors. I'd like to compare it before I put it on. Make sure it's the same size. It's the right parts. Compare it. There you go. Looks like it's good. That's gonna go in. Alright, so we're gonna clean it up before we put it in, and have a brake cleaner spray and a rag there to clean up the surface on both sides. Give it a good wipe and it's ready to go in. Alright, so I'm gonna apply some grease around the hub bore, just so in the future when I'm removing a rotor, it doesn't get stuck, just like what happened just earlier where you have to hammer it out. So that grease will lubricate it and will make easy removal for the next service. Alright, so I have nuts there on the brake rotor, so it's not gonna move out of its place, or it's not gonna be dancing around, wiggling around when I'm putting on the bracket. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a big axle nut there and put the wheel nuts just like so. It's like a big washer, sort of, and that will keep the rotors from moving around while you're putting on the bracket. Okay, now it's time to put the bracket back on. Alright, so that's tight. Okay. Alright, we're gonna unwind it and we're done. So that piston is pushed all the way in. And just give it a good clean there on the surface of the piston before we put it back together. Okay, so this is the inner pads. So you can see there's a spring-loaded or whatever you call that retainer, and that's the outer pad. There you go, I'm putting grease on the contact. So I'm just gonna push that in. It's gonna take a little bit, a couple of tries to put this on, guys. So you can see there, it's hard to film it while putting this on. So I'm gonna have to try with just like one hand. Right, you can see, guys, there you go. Having a real difficult time there. Normally it's not this difficult if it's not being filmed, and there you go. That's how you do it, with both hands, and boom. Finally you got the trick while filming. Alright guys, and then we're gonna put some lubrication on the ears, both sides of the ear pads. Alright, and finally we're gonna apply some lubrications on the outer pads. There you go. Just like so, guys. Okay, so that's gonna go outer pads, and now we're pretty much done, and we can put the caliper back on. Oh, last thing I forgot is that put some grease on the contacts for the caliper. And that is going in. Make sure you don't twist the hose. Doesn't look kink or anything like that. Make sure you put it in the right way. And that is the bolt. The other bolt. There you go. So both of the caliper bolts are in, and at this point I'd like to use my hands to just roll the bolt in, and I don't want to use my gun to begin the tightening. There you go. I have to make sure that the bolt goes in the hole properly before I use my power tools to zap it in, just like so. And finally we're gonna torque that in, make sure it's tight to the right amount of force. There you go, guys. Gonna put the cover back in. Pop, pop. And for the last part, we're gonna put the retainers. So that's the new retainer that came with the new pads. So first step is to put one side in, There you go. And put that in and just slowly force that back onto the bracket. Just like so, guys. It's all good. It's done. Alright, now guys, we're gonna start doing the rear brake job, and jacking points for the back is on the subframe of the vehicle, just like so. And we'll be jacking it up, and I'm gonna put the jack stand on the jacking lift points of the vehicle. So I have placed the jack stand on the jacking lift of the vehicle, and now I'm lowering the jack stand. Alright, here you go guys. So the vehicle is sitting on the jack stand, and I'm just gonna have the jack sitting right there to support the vehicle, just in case. There's a kid here from the neighborhood. He's biking around talking to me. You know, being a bra. Alright guys. Alright, so we're gonna remove the wheels, 21 mil socket. Okay guys, so we're gonna remove the calipers and the rotors for this. The rear brake caliper is slightly different from the front because the caliper piston needs to be pushed in while turning, so we're gonna need special tool, and you guys will see that later on. Alright, so I've removed the spring retainer and the cover cap for the caliper bolts, and we're using the same tools, 7mm hex for the bolt. And there you go. I'm showing you guys the bolts for the caliper, and that's where they are. Okay, it's time to pry the caliper out using the pry bar. Well, work your way out with a pry bar there. Go from the other side to the other side. And give it a little bit of shake and it'll come out. And there's the inner pads, outer pads. Alright guys, you can see there's two holes on the piston there. So we're gonna use the brake caliper tools for that particular holes. And with that we're gonna use a right hand thread tool, just like so. And we're gonna use that adapter that will fit right in the hole there. Alright, just like so. Alright, so basically this is how you use that tools. Make sure that adapter actually goes into those two holes on the piston, and make sure it's tight before you start turning it clockwise. You can see I'm almost turning that adjusting nut to tighten the tool, and then I can turn it clockwise. There. Just like so. See, it's getting loose, so you're gonna have to adjust that nut. Make sure it's tight. Because as you turn clockwise, that piston go down, so the so you basically have to tighten the tools against the caliper. To turn the caliper tools is counterclockwise, just like that, and I'm turning clockwise to push the piston in. Alright, so it looks like the piston is pushed all the way in, guys. That's it. Just gonna give that caliper piston clean wipe. Now it's time to remove the rotor. Okay. Okay, to remove that caliper bracket, the bolts are 14 mil, so we're gonna use a 14 mil socket. So what I'm basically trying to do here is trying to remove the rotor without actually taking that bracket off all the way, just like some Volkswagen do. You don't necessarily have to remove the whole bracket out, and you can slide that rotors out, but in this case this is Mazda and it's different, so you'll have to remove the whole bracket. Okay guys, so the rotors are out. Make sure they're the same, match the exact parts before you install them. And again, yeah, give it a good spray or brake clean, give it a good wipes before you put them in. Slotted rotors, guys, so that cross drilled, you can see it's basically going counterclockwise, so that's kind of on the left side of the vehicle. Grease around the hub bore. Perfect. Now we're going to put the rotors in just like so. I'm just gonna install a big axle nut there just to hold the rotors in place while I'm installing the bracket. There you are. So again, those bolts are 14 mil. Just gonna dab it in like that with my gun, and I'll use my ratchet to turn it all the way in and torque it. There you go. It's 14 mil socket, 14 mil bolt. This one, I would think it's probably around 20 foot-pounds, 28 foot-pounds to be safe, or you can go 30s. Okay, so the bracket bolts are tight, and now we're gonna put the pads in. Notice that the other pads has that spring, whatever you call that thing, on top. That's gonna be the inner pad, and the other one will be the outer pad, like so. Okay, but before we put it in, we're gonna put some grease on the ears of the pad, just like so. Apply sparingly, guys. It's good. Perfect. Alright, so we're gonna lubricate the contacts or the calipers, and pretty much done. We're gonna put the calipers back in. Make sure that the hose is not twisted or anything like that. You can see there, so that's basically how it was originally, and Same way when you're putting it back. The hose is not twisted or anything like that. Okay. The bolts. And again, I'd like to usually with these bolts, the Allen bolts, I usually like to start them with my hands. Just like that. Then I zap it in with my gun. There you go. 100% sure the bolt is in, and go all the way in. Tight that in. Let's say around 16 to 19 foot-pounds, I would believe so. With a torque spec. There you go. Awesome. We're gonna put the cap back on, all those bolts, and we're gonna put the spring retainers. Brand new retainers, guys. Put one side in, put the other side in the hole, and slide it outward and onto the caliper bracket. That's it. Give it a good tap just to be sure it's in the hole. We're all good, guys. So that's how you perform brake job for the front and the rear of the Mazda 3. Mazda 3 from 2003 to 2012. Alright, guys. Alright, guys, so next up we're going to be performing endlinks, rear swivel endlinks for the rear. And there you go, guys. So I'm trying to loosen that bolt up, and as you can see it's all spinning, so we'll definitely need something to hold on to the other side and zap that bolt out or not. Alright, so there I have 18 mil ratcheting wrench, extra long, and the hex that fit in there. I believe that's a size 5 or 6 mil hex. There you go. Okay, that side is done. We're gonna do the top. We're basically gonna do the same thing. It's the same tools. Oh, actually before I did all this, I had to spray WD-40, rust penetrating, so it helps to aid with, you know, loosening rusty bolts and nuts. So it's a good idea to do that before you guys do any work on stuff like rusty parts of the vehicle. Alright, guys. Yeah, the camera is down, baby, it's down. Okay, guys, so that's out. Now we have the parts There you go. It's a serviceable endlinks. So there are grease fittings for this part right here. So we basically have to fill it with some grease in it. Okay, guys. The fittings is a 7mm, I believe. We're gonna tighten that in its place. Just like so, guys. Perfect. Same thing on the other side, so both sides would have some fittings. Alright, now we're gonna put the new one in. Remove those nuts. Alright, just making sure it's the right length because I can't seem to put it in. But basically I'll find a way to put it in, guys. Alright, so I'm looking at the other side. Basically for this job, you basically have to remove both endlinks in order for you to put the new endlinks in. Alright guys, so I'm putting in the new one in also on the other side. It's like so, so you can see so if you have both endlinks out on both sides, you have some movement for the stabilizer bar. It can go up or down or side to side, so that's really important. So you can see I'm working back and forth there from one side to the other side. In fact, we're gonna need a jack. Forgot what I did it here. It's been a while. Alright, so I jacked that up. So it's in the hole. Both sides are in the hole, guys. We're in business. There you go. Oh, once again, jack it up again. It's not in. And there you are. Just trying to see if the bolt went through the hole up there. So it doesn't look like it did, so I'm basically gonna remove that. As you can see there, you can see the thread bolts on top there. There you go. Oh yeah. Came out. Probably best to put nuts on so it doesn't fall off like that, guys. Okay, lesson learned. Alright, so the first thing we do is we're gonna insert the top bolt of the endlinks, and we're gonna put nuts over it so it doesn't fall down. And we're gonna have both of the lower endlinks go in at the same time as the other side. There you go. Just a matter of popping it in. Bolts are in, and then we're just gonna tighten the bolts, and that should be it. It's a new bolt or nut, so it's going to be a new size. Alright, so that must be a size 16, 17. It is 17 perhaps. It's turning, so I will be using my tools, my hand tools, to tighten it up. Alright, as you can see, I'm using two tools there. So the hex and the extra long box ratchet. The hex is to counter the clockwise turn. Alright, nice and tight. There you go. It's all good. Alright, hey, what's up guys? So we're gonna perform re-and-re rear shocks of this vehicle. This car has about over 200k and the shocks are badly worn out and blown. It had leaked out all its fluid and it's very bouncy when you're going around, when you're driving around. It could be dangerous, guys. Okay, so we're gonna replace that. We're gonna put a new one in. We're gonna have to jack up the rear, just like so. And we're gonna zap out that 70 mil bolt. Alright, I have it on fast forward just a little bit so we can get everything fast. Alright guys, speed it up a little bit there. So there's two nuts with the shocks up there on the strut. There you go. Right there we got a nice view of the two nuts that we're gonna lose. Right, so that's a 12 mil socket. Loosening it, and then I'm gonna use my gun to sap it out. Alright guys, nuts are out and the shocks are down. Shocks are gonna go out from the top, not from the bottom. So you're gonna have to work your way out. There you go, it's out. And now we're gonna compare the shocks, the new one and the old one. Make sure that it is the right one. No, we're not putting in the wrong one, guys. Alright guys, so we're gonna remove the top mount of the shocks. We're gonna put that in the new one, and by doing that we're gonna have to use a 13 mil socket for the nut. And the vice grip to hold on the shock rod, because it will spin. Whatever you do, it will spin on you if you don't hold the rod. So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have vice grip hold onto the rod while you're loosening the nut. Alright guys, so here you go. That's the wrong socket unfortunately, and I'm gonna go grab the right one. There you go guys. So the nut is out and you just gotta pop that tap mount out and the bump stop. There you go guys. And that's the new one. Compress it and remove the strap. Alright, there you go guys. One putting in the tap mount with the bump stop. And of course the cover. And there it is guys. So that's how it's gonna go. Cover, the tap mount, and the bump stop. Just like so. There you go. You're gonna wanna push that cover back in. And the brand new nut. That was actually the old one. This is the new nut. There you go guys. Alright, so there you go. Move that cover out and I'm gonna squeeze it with a vice grip, and this time I'm gonna put a rags on the rod so I don't damage the rod. Make sense guys? There you go. It's not very tight. There you go, nice and tight. And we're gonna put that boot cover back in onto the bump stop, just like so, and we're ready to put it back in now guys. It's going in. Alright, so the trick to getting this shocks in is of course put the tap mount in first onto the studs. Make sure you put that in, and lastly, just like so, I'm putting the Tamon in the studs and compressing the shocks, and that will go in the hole there, just like so, guys. Very easy. Make sure you have a nut in the Tamon so it doesn't fall like what happened there, just like that, so it will fall on you. Make sure you have a nut there just to hold it so it doesn't fall. Perfect, guys, so that's it. This one's going in. All we have to do is tighten it in. There you go, guys. So that bolt, 17mm bolt, is going in. Gonna zap that in. Make sure that's in. Zap it in like that, and it's good to go, guys. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.